insights, picks, results. This is Wizard Sports Picks. Beyond the Lines.
Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Lines, presented by Wizard Sports Picks for Friday, February the 20th. Ian Cameron with you, and another great episode of the show. We're going to talk college basketball on this edition of the show. We're going to give you two games for Friday night, and we'll give you some picks and hopefully some winning recommendations for two of the games for Friday in college basketball. Of course, NBA is back in action as well following the All-Star break. I typically tread a little bit lighter and cautiously with the NBA coming out of the All-Star break. Let the teams get a couple of games under their belt before jumping back into it. Certainly, it is back, and it is on the menu of items that all of our great handicappers at wizardsportspicks.com will be involved in from a betting standpoint. The NHL will resume next week as well. So great time of year with March Madness, of course, right around the corner. Great time of year to check out wizardsportspicks.com. Get on board with daily premium picks as well as some longer-term subscription options. We have 3-day, 7-day, 30-day, and 1-year all sports, all access passes available from me or any of the handicappers on the website. Make sure you type in your email address on the homepage as well to get free picks sent to your inbox each and every day. For me, number one ranked handicapper at wizardsportspicks.com in the NFL this season. It was a great NFL season. Number one in the NHL currently. A great, profitable NBA season so far to this point. And yes, college basketball has been up and down for me compared to those other sports, but we're on a nice little 5-2 run in college basketball and lots of time left in the season to have profits there. So it's a great time of year to get on board with me or anyone on the website. Get on board at wizardsportspicks.com. All right, let's get into the two games. We're going to start with VCU and St. Louis, the Rams and the Billikens. Friday night, Atlantic 10 matchup here, and a showdown, really, between these two teams, because VCU, you could say right now, the hottest team in the Atlantic 10, and St. Louis has been the best team in the Atlantic 10 start to finish this season. One of the best teams in the country this season. That is how well St. Louis has played. We've got St. Louis anywhere from a 7.5 to 8.5 point home favorite here in St. Louis. 165.5 the total in this game. These teams already played once this year, and it was St. Louis going down to VCU to the Convocation Center and beating VCU in that first meeting between these teams by a score of 71-62. I think one thing that stands out about that game is it was a very low-scoring game, considering the total in that game was 171.5. That's right. 171.5. Yeah, it only stayed under by 38, 39 points. Not even close. It was obviously a night where both teams struggled to shoot the basketball. St. Louis was only 43% from the field, 30% from three-point range, and for VCU, it was a dreadful shooting night. 18 for 63, 29% shooting, 6 for 24, 25% from three-point range. I'd expect both teams to shoot the ball better here in this game, but more importantly, I think St. Louis in particular has a better game here in this one. Coming off a loss against Rhode Island, Josh Schertz, the great head coach, he's done a great job here with St. Louis this year, kind of said it. The players kind of hinted at it after the loss to Rhode Island back on Tuesday earlier this week, saying, we kind of needed a slap in the face, a wake-up call. We started to think we're, too good of a team to prepare properly for an opponent. And, reading their press clippings is basically the motto, the mantra that was coming from the St. Louis Billikens after that loss against Rhode Island, that now we just need to, this is a loss that we can use, to hit the reset button, realize what we have to do to prepare to win games. I would expect St. Louis to have a much better effort, performance, and execution here. They are a perfect 16-0 this year at home. And yeah, VCU, and they are on a great run right now, no question. This is a team that's won 10 straight games. Although when you start to pick away at the schedule here, they did beat Rhode Island on the road, but St. Joe's, Davidson, Richmond, a horrible Loyola Chicago team. Fordham's not very good. Dayton's not the same team this year. LaSalle, again. Richmond, again, down from where they've been in the past. George Washington was a pretty decent win at home, but again, going on the road, facing a St. Louis team that is going to have their full focus, you would think, for this game. coming off the loss against Rhode Island. I think it's going to be a little bit tough for VCU here, a VCU team that still has to show they can go on the road and get the job done. Let's not forget St. Louis beat VCU last year here in this building, 78-69. What I am going to do here in this matchup with VCU and with St. Louis is I'm going to split this bet between point spread and team total, because I like St. Louis here in a bounce back spot, and I still think they're the better of these two teams. But I am going to go with a split between St. Louis -7.5, -110, and the St. Louis team total over 87.5 at -105. I think there's a chance they get to 90. Let's not forget, this is a St. Louis Billikens team that's been one of the best offensive teams as far as efficiency in college basketball. They play very fast as well from a pace standpoint. This is a team that's averaging 90.2 points per game this season. And when you filter that to the home games only, St. Louis is averaging 95 points per game this season. They need 88 to get over their team total. I think there's a great chance they hit that. With VCU, we still have to see if this team defensively on the road against the best team in the A10 is going to be capable of playing the improved defense that their head coach, Phil Martelli Jr., has certainly been, praising them for. This is a different animal. This is an amazing offensive team. They can score inside. They can score on the perimeter. They're coming off a loss that's probably going to have them ready to go here. I need to see it with my own two eyes with this VCU defense against an elite team before I'm totally buying in on them being, a great a turnaround defensive team all of a sudden. So I think St. Louis is in a good situation here. So I'll give you two recommendations here in this game. It's really a split bet for me. We got half of it on the point spread, half of it on the total. St. Louis -7.5, -110, as well as St. Louis team total over 87.5, -105 against VCU for Friday night college basketball action. All right, let's go to one of the big matchups on Friday night, Big Ten action, Indiana and Purdue. We've got Purdue anywhere from 9.5 to 10.5 point home favorites here at Mackey Arena, 148.5 the total. And this is another game where I didn't just make a bet, make one bet. I made two bets, and I decided to split this bet up into two different bets here in this Indiana-Purdue game. Let's start with Purdue. Obviously, Purdue's coming off that loss against Michigan earlier this week at home, 91-80. Don't be fooled by the final score. A lot of garbage time points for the Purdue Boilermakers. This is a team that only scored 32 points in the first half. Michigan had a huge lead, kind of fell asleep in the last 5 minutes, and that's when Purdue piled on a lot more points. 80 points for Purdue is very flattering as far as their final output offensively. What's funny about them scoring 80 points is they really didn't have a great offensive game. You'd think 80 points against Michigan. Wow, they still shot pretty well. Not when you look at some of the numbers. I mean, Braden Smith was only 4 for 13. Fletcher Lawyer was held to 11 points. It was a little bit of a difficult night for multiple Purdue Boilermakers shooting the basketball. Obviously, defensively, they had their problems with Michigan, who shot beyond 50% from not only the field overall, but three-point range in particular. That being said, Indiana should be a team that Purdue's able to score against here. Indiana gave up 71 to Illinois on the road in their last game. They gave up 74 to Oregon at home, 77 to Wisconsin at home. And they've had some ugly defensive efforts, Indiana, on the road in Big Ten play. 81 allowed to Michigan State, 86 allowed to Michigan, 97 allowed to UCLA, which is hard to believe because UCLA has had some issues at times putting the biscuit in the basket. And then at USC in the loss to the Trojans, they gave up 81 on the road in that game. So we know Indiana has had some issues defensively on the road. This is probably a good spot for Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman, Wren and company to have a better offensive game here than they did against Michigan. This is still a Purdue Boilermakers team that we've seen them at home score 79 against Iowa, 82 in a loss to Illinois on this home floor. Like I said, they had a pretty rotten offensive game. Still were able to score 80 against Michigan earlier this week. So I think they score their points here in a bounce-back spot against Indiana. Will they cover the number? I'm not so sure about that because Indiana has covered 3 straight head-to-head against Purdue. And last year when they met here at Mackey, 81-76 Purdue, 5-point victory for the Boilers. But Indiana covered as 12-point dogs. It was a close game. Purdue got to 81. They scored pretty well, but they gave up 76. And what concerns me about laying it with Purdue, the points that is, 9.5, 10.5, is that Indiana's coming off a terrible offensive showing against Illinois on the road, 51 points. An Indiana team that only shot 41% in that game, 25% from three-point range. And usually when I know a team is capable offensively, and Indiana is off a really bad shooting night, I like to think there's positive regression on the way for them offensively. So I expect Indiana to be able to score some points here in this game as well. Let's not forget that even though Purdue at home, we have seen them give up 72 to Iowa, 88 to Illinois in previous Big Ten home games. Obviously, the 91 that they gave up Purdue to Michigan earlier this week. I think Indiana, off that 51-point output against Illinois, they will have a better offensive game. So I think Purdue is going to score a bunch, but I think Indiana will score too in this game. So I want to back the Purdue side of it for sure, but I think Indiana's going to chip in enough that I think this game could go over the full game total. So I decided to go with two bets here in this game. I decided to stay away from Purdue laying the points, trusting more in their offense than their defense, because I do think Indiana, off a very rough shooting night against Illinois, will have a better night putting the ball in the basket here. So I decided for the two bets in this game in Big Ten action on Friday night, Indiana-Purdue, I decided to go with Purdue team total over 79.5, minus 120. Again, that's just isolating Purdue to get to 80 points, which is something they were able to do last year when they hosted Indiana, and something they've done routinely at home is be able to score 80 points. So Purdue team total over 79.5, minus 120. And I also split that with Purdue and Indiana, the full game over 148.5, minus 105. I think we can go 2-0 with these. And that way, if Purdue scores 80, we win the team total. And I don't have to worry about, 80 to 74 or exactly what the final score was last year between Indiana and Purdue at Mackey Arena, 81-76. Purdue doesn't cover the point spread, but they go over their team total, and Indiana scores enough to push the game over the full game total, which was only 144.5 in that 81-76 Purdue win last year here at Mackey Arena. So I like this approach a lot. Purdue team total over 79.5, minus 105, along with Purdue, Indiana over 148.5, minus 105. I think we got a great chance for the 2-0 sweep there with that approach in that Big Ten matchup on Fox on Friday night, Purdue, Indiana. All right, there you have it. And that is this edition of Beyond the Lines. Make sure you get to the website, wizardsportspicks.com. Tons of great handicappers in great form. Tons of great sports going on right now, of course. NBA's back, college basketball, conference tournaments, NCAA tournament, March Madness right around the corner. Can't wait for that. And the NHL, a sport where I am number one at Wizard Sports Picks, will be back next week as well. So get on board with any one of the great handicappers, including yours truly, at wizardsportspicks.com. I'm Ian Cameron. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Beyond the Lines. Hit the like button on the way out. This has been Beyond the Lines, the Friday, February 20th edition of Beyond the Lines, presented by Wizard Sports Picks.